But I am real. I am here, and nothing can push me aside. Nothing can change what goes on in this world. This world is for me too, honey. And they have to understand that.
What's up, y'all? Welcome to the Brose Breakdown. Wait, what's up, y'all? Welcome to the Brose Breakdown. Thank you guys for watching. Shout out to everybody that watched my last video. I took like months off and got 13K, and it's only been a week. Thank y'all so much for the support and watching that, from the good comments to the other type of comments. So I appreciate the engagement. I'm trying to get back to everyone as soon as I can, but uh just bear with me, okay? But before we get to the video, make sure you guys like, comment, subscribe, and share and comment. Now today we're going to be talking about, is ballroom the new aesthetic? You're more so seeing it throughout media and popularity, and I kind of want to just talk about like how that can be, it could be either a good thing or a questionable thing. So the terms I use, I talked about butch queen and femme queen. Butch queen is to describe a cis gay man who has, who has great upkeep, gets nails done, haircut, just well aligned. And then femme queens are categorized as trans women who have who keep themselves together and have a very high upkeep and very glamorous looking, right? And butch queens are very masculine presenting, but they still have a femininity to them as well. So basically, to give you a breakdown, the idea of this video is ballroom the new aesthetic? And it touches on an evolving trend in pop culture, mainstream media, fashion, and beauty standards, where there's increasing visibility and appreciation, quote unquote, of the aesthetic. While this phenomenon can be seen as empowering for the ballroom community, but it's also important to consider the complexities and the potential pitfall of the trend, right? And let's talk about some reasons why. Now, people from ballroom have been in mainstream media like Amiyah Scott, people who are opposed, legendary, like Lee Daniels Star and things like that. But is the aesthetic now being adopted to mainstream media? And I feel like you can see it. You can see it way before the 2020s. Like certain celebrities and rappers would use certain aesthetics from ballroom and bring it to mainstream media without always accredited it. One big that has accredited was, Little Kim. Little Kim had her first done by Hector Extravaganza, so she's always been someone who spoke up for not the ballroom community specifically, but like that. And then you have other artists like Janet Jackson and Rihanna and those who have been to balls and participated, and not participated but been in there and went to them. People I'm looking at that are adopting the butch queen aesthetic would definitely be boi Carti. The way he looks, the way he does makeup, the way he just, the whole face looks like someone who walks butch queen face. Same with, I would say, Alton Mason. Now, I don't know about Alton Masons, who Alton Masons identify with, so I can only, go off of what he portrayed, but he hasn't said anything, so I'm not going to assume him to be a part of the community. I'm just going to assume to be him. So he seems like someone who definitely is influenced by the community. Also, in terms of the femme queen aesthetic, you could definitely see the exaggerated breasts and exaggerated hips. Now, people may argue like, "Hey, that's a black woman aesthetic," which is true. Which black trans women, they're women, right? So, but I would say it's a different type of look to that, in terms of like the more so the facial structures and the facial feminization, such as like a nose job. So you can see those. I'm not saying these women look like trans women, but you can see the aesthetic of it, such as like in like a Summer Walker, because she's around trans women as well. Femme queens, sorry, trans women, femme queens. The Clermont twins, they have more so of overly feminized look, and that's what a lot of femme queens look like, right? So just to categorically break it down, we're going to go into different aspects, right? So one, increase media visibility. Like I said, you're seeing it in pose, you're seeing it in certain aspects. The ballroom community has gained access visually in mainstream media, especially in recent years. Celebrities, like I said, Amiyah Scott, and I think Angelica Ross is as well. In terms of butch queens, there's no celebrity that's a part of ballroom, but women like that and others have made waves in the entertainment industry. And as you see them more in like television films, you're kind of seeing their presence help reshape, I guess, contribute to the beauty standard. So we're not kind of taken from the underground now, you're kind of seeing it front facing, right? Then that goes to the next thing, fashion and beauty. We had people like Tracy Africa, who was in ballroom while simultaneously being on covers of magazines and really pushing it to the forefront. Fashion designer, brands, and photographers are increasingly showcasing people, trans femme queens, and then like butch queens in campaigns. Of course, it should be more, right? If you're going to borrow from them, but you're kind of seeing it here and there slowly, which is contributing to a broader, more inclusive idea of what beauty is looking like in a sense. And that can just showcase what the beauty standards are becoming now, or not even becoming, or just looking like now, right? Then you have the aesthetic of transformation. A lot of these people like butch queens, they do a lot of things to themselves, like fillers and filler nose jobs, lips, injections. They even might take hormones to enhance their look and give themselves a glow right before a ball. So you're kind of seeing a lot of like butch queens do that, and then you seeing that gets turned into the mainstream media of these celebrities, like like the guys that I named, and then you're seeing regular cis hetero male kind of taken from that. And this is kind of going off the aesthetic portion, but like the word, like the term clock it, a lot of like clock it. Now how people do this when it usually used to be like this, and that stems from ballroom. And that wasn't even clock it. That means you're eating it up, like you ate that, like you're doing that one, right? But a lot of people, they're taking that and turning it to a whole nother thing, right? So then challenging just gender norms again. A lot of butch queens and femme queens have been challenging what is normal, right? Blending different elements of femininity and masculinity in ways that can be very revolutionary. They were doing that way before the 2000s, right? But in a world where we're in now, you're seeing that more people are being fluid, when people in ballroom was doing that way before I was even probably born, right? So that's challenging the norm. And then you have those who, the social media presence, like named earlier, Amiyah Scott, she kind of just like took over social media with her beauty ideas, her hair color, her the way she looked, her makeup style, and other trans women, not to take away from them too, they have done that. Femme queens and trans women have done it as well from ballroom, took their ballroom skills and brought it to social media, which influenced a whole generation of cis hetero people coming up to adopt that style. You have a lot of butch queens who are in ballroom that are very big on social media, that have platforms, and they show their tips and tricks of how to, like, their skincare, their body type regimen, the way they look, the way they dress, how they carry themselves, and how to look like. When I look at Alton Mason and how he like showcases and how he's like sells it to a red carpet, it's kind of like looking like at a butch queen at a ball who's selling it for face in front of a panel. So that's kind of how I see it. I would say, like, who is one, like Christian Banks. He's kind of big. He was on Legendary. The way he showcases his style and how he does his like inflections, well, his movements and things. I see that in automations and other models too that are using those aesthetics. Another thing I would say out of it is representation and inspiration, right? For some, that ballroom aesthetic may reflect a broader desire of representation, meaning many people look to, like I said, these people, this communities, femme queens and butch queens, as inspirations. Now, the downside of it is, while the trends can be empowering, they can it's important to think about, one is exploitation and objectification. Now, this always happens in a community, especially the black community, and then, you're putting being trans, or you're putting being gay, or, 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 being non-binary or any of that. On top of that, you're always going to get unfortunately exploited and objectified. As many groups who gain attention in mainstream culture, there's a risk of the ballroom aesthetic being objectified or reduced to just being more so a trend, right? The focus on their aesthetic can kind of overshadow the struggles that they're facing every day. How black trans women are constantly getting killed, how but black butch queens have been killed, black trans men have been killed. Just the other things that they face, the being exploited for money, not being paid the same, pay gaps, transphobia, homophobia, violence, and just even just regular access to healthcare, right? Especially with the Trump administration. So this trend can sometimes strip away at the individuality and the complexity of the community. Then shallow appreciation, that kind of goes into that. When the aesthetic is in a trend, right? There's a danger their experiences being commodified in a way where it doesn't take in the full account of their humanity. They just want you to be this certain thing. They want you to look this certain way. There's no room for doing something else, because if you're that, you're going to get shunned away. You're not going to be appreciated enough. So you're just not really taking account of who they are personally. You're just kind of just using them for their aesthetic. And then tokenization. I always talk about tokenization more so in intimate partnerships or just friendships, right? But this one, there's a risk of being tokenized, being, the tokenized femme queen, the tokenized butch queen on your team. You see that with the hairstylists and the other things like that, using their visibility and aesthetic as a symbol of progressiveness, kind of like or inclusivity without doing the necessary work to address like the transphobia and discrimination in society, right? So, like, for example, India from Pose called out Ryan Murphy because while he was employing these black trans women, he wasn't speaking out against transphobia and them dying at an alarming rate. Same with Angelica Ross. Angelica Ross told a story about how Ryan Murphy kind of stopped her bag or stopped her from getting a Marvel deal. So you have these things that are happening, like they're enjoying the aesthetic, they're employing you guys, but they're only using it because they think it's a trend. The ballroom aesthetic reflects a broader cultural shift towards inclusion and redefinition of beauty standards, right? However, it's essential to engage with the trend in a way that respect them, also that's authentic, and recognition of the challenges that the community face on a day-to-day basis, right? If you are a cis person like myself, or if you are, a cis hetero person or someone who respects the community and you're not a part, do yourself a favor to learn certain things and not only, use if you want to use the aesthetic, if you're going to at least, do it in a more so respectful way and learn about their history so you can be an accomplice and not just an ally or a self-proclaimed ally. So let me know, what are your thoughts on this shift on the ballroom being the new aesthetic? I feel like you can definitely see it with the people that I named. I think that people are seeing them and looking at them for beauty tips and things like that. There's also need to be a way where you're standing for their rights and you're helping them. So yeah, but make sure you guys like, comment, subscribe, and share. Let me know what you think in the comments. And if any of y'all, if anybody from the ballroom scene had any crowd funds they want to send me, I would be happy to donate and put it in the box below. I don't know what that is. This is the description box below. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you on my next one. Peace.